Hey guys, it's Mr. Crowson, and today we're going to talk about, once it gets loaded, Unit 9A political parties. As you guys know, last week you covered Unit 9, which was, I think you guys called it the Federalist era, but basically it was Washington's presidency, the first president of the United States, and the things that he did. And we're going to talk about political parties. And so, how does this tie in? Well, long story short, as you well know, George Washington warned the Continental Congress at the time and his advisors, hey, don't form political parties. Political parties cause problems. They cause division in the United States. We don't need that. So as soon as he left office, what happened? A guy named Alexander Hamilton and a guy named Thomas Jefferson went ahead and made a Federalist and a Democratic Republican party. As a disclaimer, you might hear me just say Republican. That means Democratic Republican. It does not mean the Republican Party of today. It's the Democratic Republican Party from the late 17, early 1800s. And then, of course, Federalist is a party from then as well. So those are the first two political parties. And we're going to talk about these two individuals and what the parties meant for them. We're also going to look at quotes and how the election process played out and who was the second president of the United States, and go from there. This video is also going to be an Edpuzzle video, so you will be asked questions throughout this video to answer. So please pay attention and answer the questions so you can get a good grade. All right, so let's get started. So first off, this is the meet standard level 3. There you can see the level 4. So now you know what you need to do to get a level 3. You also need to know two big ideas. How do political parties affect our government, and would our country be better off without political parties? Keep those questions in mind. We will come back to those at the end. All right, so the first quote, you can see there, it says, "The people are turbulent and changing. They seldom judge or determine right." So first question is, did a Federalist or a Republican say this? And secondly, what does it tell you about their belief of ordinary citizens? Now, if we were teaching, typically you guys probably would have already learned this information, but we're sort of crunching it down. So hopefully you've kind of asked yourself that question already. Who said it was Federalist Alexander Hamilton. And so what does it tell you about their belief of ordinary citizens? They basically thought people like you and me, ordinary people, we would be considered ordinary people, were basically just too chaotic. We have too much that happens in our life. We are constantly changing. We are fallible. And so there might be a day where we can make a decent decision, but there might be a day where we don't make good decisions. So ordinary people cannot judge or determine what's right, i.e. they can't really make good choices for the government. So Federalists felt, and we will talk about this in a little bit, but Federalists felt that normal people shouldn't be in office and should not run. Okay, here's another quote. As you can see, it sort of just popped up and said Thomas Jefferson, Republican, so there's the answer. But I am not among those who fear the rich are the people. They, and not the rich, are our dependents, what we depend on, for continued freedom. So what does this tell you about their belief of ordinary citizens? Well, what it tells you is that Thomas Jefferson, who was a Republican, Democratic Republican, was that it was the normal people, again, like you and me, that actually will make this country continue to be free, continue to work, continue to be strong. It's not the rich people, because rich people don't get it. Now, Thomas Jefferson was a wealthy man, and he said this. So that's not to say there wasn't rich people in the Democratic Republicans, but the Democratic Republicans were more supportive of the ordinary people. So there's some background knowledge of the two parties. So the first real election occurred in 1796 after George Washington left. And as you can see, what happened was Republicans nominated Thomas Jefferson and Aaron Burr, and the Federalists nominated John Adams and Charles Pinckney. All right, so back then, you nominated the people that you wanted to be president, and then you did the election. And whoever got the most votes became the president and then the vice president. So looking at this map, who do you think became president? And then who do you think became vice president? So if you looked at the map and kind of determined and sort of, looked at it, you can see that the green is the Democratic Republican, the red or pink is John Adams. And so John Adams got 71 electoral votes, and Jefferson got 68. That's 51% to 49%. What does that mean? That means that John Adams became the president of the United States, and Thomas Jefferson became the vice president. So why might this be a problem? Well, let me ask you this question. You guys are smart and kind of are up to date with the current political climate. 4 years ago, I would have used a different example, but this year I'm going to use this example. Joe Biden has been our now president-elect, right? He's been chosen to be the next president. As far as we know, he will become our next president. Let's say it was, and then he ran against Donald Trump. So let's say President Donald Trump lost, which he did, and then let's say Joe Biden becomes our new president. Well, in this election, if we're using what happened in the first election, what would have happened is Donald Trump would become the vice president. So why might that be a problem? Do you think that Joe Biden and Donald Trump would work together really well and make good decisions for the country? If your answer is no, they would not, you were probably correct. And guess what? In 1796, it was the same exact problem. It was a problem because nobody wanted to communicate. Nobody wanted to work together. The Republicans had a different mentality of how the country should go, and the Federalists had a different mentality of how the country should go, and they weren't willing to meet in the middle. So John Adams, who was known as his roundity because he was short and round, becomes the second president of the United States. And then Thomas Jefferson becomes the vice president. Spoiler alert, he eventually becomes president of the United States. So let's go ahead and get through this. This is sort of a T-chart that kind of tells you about the government, economy, constitution, and foreign affairs of each of the parties. As you can see, France is already on the bottom down here. We'll get to that. But for the most part, it's going to bounce back and forth between each one. And then down here, it's going to kind of cover this, then cover this, and then we'll cover the nations. So, okay. First things first, Federalists believed the government was a strong national government, meaning that the national government should be very strong, have a lot of power, be able to make decisions. Democratic Republicans believed in limited national government, which means that the national government doesn't have as much power and that the power should be more involved with the states. And we'll talk about that in just a second. The shared power of the Federalists was between state and federal. So they should share the power, but again, the national government should have a lot more power, meaning federal. And most of the power, again, for the Republicans should be for the states. So for the Republicans, it was limited national government, more power to the states. The Federalist, it was a stronger national government, but the state and federal government have some shared powers. Well, these state and federal government of who should have more powers is actually something we have arguments and disagreements about to this day. So some things have not changed since 1796. Federalists believe that wealthy, educated men should be elected to lead the government, and Republicans believe that ordinary people should be involved in the government. Now, when I tell you that, I bet some of you might be thinking, okay, well, ordinary people, that's fine, I guess, but wealthy, educated people aren't bad either. And that's true. Neither are bad, but the Federalists felt like only wealthy, educated people should run, and ordinary people should not at all. And the Republicans felt like only ordinary people should really be involved in government, even though most of the Democratic Republicans were wealthy, educated people. So again, that sort of two-faced, double-edged sword mentality of politicians have been around since the beginning of time. We're now to economy. Manufacturing and trade was the way to get the economy boosting for the Federalists, whereas land was how the Republicans believed the economy should grow. And if everybody owned land and could have a farm, that would be good. Urban growth of cities and factories was how that the economy would also grow. So if you can grow the cities, you can get more people to the cities, you can build more factories in the cities, and that would cause more people to move to the cities and have jobs and be employed, and it would help the economy. Whereas if you go with the Republicans, if everybody has more land, everybody can be a farmer, you have more agrarian type society, and the agrarian type society can produce more goods through the land, causing more people to have jobs and more people to be able to kind of produce and protect and provide for themselves. Constitution for Federalists. Not every power could be listed. Government should have the power to do the things they feel is necessary and proper to running the country. Okay, so what does this mean? Basically, this is loose construction. That's the term. And loose construction means that if it's not in the Constitution, you could still do it because it's a loosely based power that you should do if it's necessary and proper for the country. So not every power could be listed in the Constitution, meaning let's say it doesn't say in the Constitution that on Fridays everyone should get off at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's not said in the Constitution. Federalists believe that, okay, if it doesn't say that in the Constitution, we can still do that though. And if the government should have that power to say we should do that, and then, of course, that's something that is necessary and proper to running the country and protecting the country, then albeit that's just what should happen. Republicans, on the other hand, were limited. They were strict constructionists. Strict constructionists basically said if it's in the Constitution, that's the only thing that the federal government can do. So, funny story, we'll talk about it later, but there is a president that was a limited constructionist that actually became president, or that a congressman that eventually became president, and then he completely ignored his limited construction idea and bought the Louisiana Purchase. And we'll talk about that more later in a later session. But long story short, Constitution, limited, unlimited, if you wanted to put it that way, basically. Unlimited power versus limited power, only what's in the Constitution. Again, these are issues that still exist to this day. We've had for the last 3 presidents, for sure, a ton of executive orders, and that's sort of a loose constructionist idea. Well, it's whatever necessary and proper. Well, not really, because it's only used for this. And these are issues that still exist with people, with our current parties, Democrats and Republicans. All right, and then foreign affairs. Basically, Federalists liked Great Britain because Great Britain was a very powerful and respected nation, and it allowed for a greater alliance and more protection, good trade, etc. And then, of course, France was our ally during the American Revolution, so Democratic Republicans felt like we should ally with them. So there was that split there. Again, if you remember, there was a neutrality proclamation that basically told us to stay out of their affairs. And so, of course, immediately, just like mom and dad leaving the house to go to work, and then you turn around and throw a house party or jump on the bed or, throw the cat out the window or whatever it is that you want to do. That's kind of what America did as soon as George Washington left. All right, last slide. Here's your big ideas. How do political parties affect our government today? And would our country be better off without political parties? So what I want you guys to do is I want you to think about these questions. And I want you to answer these questions in your head. And I want you to be prepared to present these questions to your teachers, because these are important questions. And this is how you learn and how you can make a difference in our own government. Okay, so I realize that was a big rundown, pretty fast. I'm sorry if it was, but we're trying to crunch in this unit for next week or for this week and trying to get it knocked out. So if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact Mrs. Brunk, Mrs. Yates, or myself, and we will be glad to help you. Stay safe, everyone, and we hope to see you next year. Adios.